The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Be a movie. Yeah, we're gonna be a movie.
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Be a movie. We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody.
And me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in. We're gonna start right here.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to, well, not Damn You Hollywood, not TV Party Tonight. I'm hosting something new. Welcome to Triple Feature. I'm Alexis Hejna, and tonight, well, it is the spooky season, and we got almost the whole unholy trinity here, so I think it's time to crack open some new horror films. We're going to be taking a look at 3 scary movies all released on streaming over the last month. Joining me to my that angle, Mr. Robert Winfree. Hello.
Hello, I'm camera right.
Your camera right. Okay. And down below, still have no idea where the hell he's recording from, but I was glad he was able to join us, Mr. Dorian Price.
Hello.
All right. So tonight, yes, we are taking a look at Salem's Lot, which came out on Max. We're going to take a look at Apartment 7A on Paramount Plus, and we are going to talk Mr. Crocket, which was released on Hulu.
Well, that was at least something.
Yeah, no kidding. And we usually try to do something horror related every October. And the last few years, it has always been the new Mike Flanagan piece on Netflix. But this year, Mr. Flanagan did not grace us with anything on Netflix, so we had to go searching.
We kept calling him. He never called us back.
Yeah, it's we got stood up this time around, and we're a little bitter about it.
Well, he heard us complaining about the monologues. I mean,
He's like, fine, you don't like it? Fuck your 2024.
You know, I think he just finally got the feedback from Midnight Society or Midnight Club.
yeah, because it's like we gave good recommendations for Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
We gave good recommendations for Fall of the House of Usher.
Yep.
But yeah, we kind of raked Midnight Club over the coals.
Flanagan's pretty reliably good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. It's kind of shocking if you look at his filmography how easily you can track that.
So it's not him, it's us.
Yeah, that is Haunting of Hill House is a very, very good, and then the follow-up is very not.
I like Haunting of Bly Manor.
I thought it was good too, but I mean, yeah, let's face it. Hill House, Midnight Mass, House of Usher are the 3 standouts of his Netflix. I mean, you want to talk about his, theatrical releases with Gerald's Game and wait, did Gerald's Game get a theatrical release?
No, Gerald's Game was straight to Netflix as well.
Right.
But I actually appreciate his take on Gerald's Game because that book is almost unfilmable. And he found a way to make it work, so kudos to him for that one.
Not to mention you have Dr. Sleep and Oculus, 2 very wonderful films.
Oculus is good.
Dr. Sleep.
I still have my
Dr.
issues with
Sleep.
Dr. Sleep.
Dorian, we are not starting an argument about The Shining again, okay?
No. Honestly, again, I cannot believe these words that come out of my mouth. But I have to agree very strongly with Robert here. Is that I think Oculus is a really great film, and without starting a fight about The Shining, which was not my plan, I felt like Mike Flanagan's Dr. Sleep was trying to fix everything that Kubrick had done wrong in The Shining within a tight 90-minute thing while still trying to stick to the story of the book that was the sequel to the first thing, and it was like, how many chainsaws can this man juggle before one of them hits him in the head?
And shockingly, he did okay until the ending. And that's my
Right.
biggest. I know that there's a running gag that, well, at least the movie had an ending, whereas the book kind of just trails off. And don't get me wrong, I'm not unsympathetic to that case, but I mean, killing Danny just because we didn't get to kill Jack the right way at the end of The Shining was just such a weird choice.
All right. What we need to do is we need to have a new show on the W2M network. It's called R&D. And it will stand for Robert and Dorian, but it'll sound like research and development. Be like, all right, here's where it fucked up. Here's where we fixed it. Are you listening, Mr. Radlich? Do you want to strangle me yet?
Mark won't care what you do.
He's already given you enough control. I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't offered you your own show yet.
No, my job is just to bring the crazy ass people that I have in my life onto the show and add to the sex appeal and the insanity.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, let's look at this way. Robert cannot carry the entire sex appeal on his shoulders for the entirety of all the shows on W2M. I gotta help out. I gotta help out the bitchy yoga mom because again, we love our bitchy yoga mom.
It's my back, man. I can't. The scoliosis is killing me.
All right. Now, okay, we didn't actually plan. What movie do we want to talk about first?
Well, seeing as we just talked King, seems a good enough way to dovetail into Salem's Lot.
All right. So, yeah, Salem's Lot. This is the 2024 remake of the 1975 novel. I actually have the novel. It was gifted to me by my bestie. Haven't read the thing yet. Been too damn busy. I've got just a massive pile of books and a lot of Stephen King books. Is like, I'll get to those when, I'm not either, bleeding from my work or from Mark.
Hello, Mr. Kettner. I don't exactly know what you mean by dear God, ma'am, but we're glad you're here.
Okay, so again, this is the latest remake, latest adaptation, I should say, of this book.
Yeah, we're on number 3 now, right? Because we got the 70s one, we got the Rob Lowe one in like the early 2000s, and then this one, right?
We had 2 miniseries in 1979 and 2004. The 1979 miniseries is the one that a lot of people relate to and talk about when they talk about Salem's Lot, especially the image of the little vampire boy outside the glass window hovering. That is one of those.
Somewhat famously upstaged by The Simpsons doing it in their vampire episode of the Treehouse of Horror, but that's where they draw that one from.
Okay, quick hot take. Again, as the kid of the group, I have never watched one single minute nor full episode of Treehouse of Horror.
Okay, just cut him off.
Leave.
We don't need.
Child. My God. I'm actually waiting to see if he brings himself back because I know he's got control, so I'm just waiting to find out. Okay,
a second or two.
All right. So yes, that is the image. So this is the first adaptation that is a singular movie, not a mini series. Screw it, I'll bring him back. I can't stay mad at you.
It's your show. I wasn't going to supersede you.
That's never stopped you before.
Yeah, I'm growing.
This is what we call character development, which is more than can be said for a lot of Salem's Lot.
Hang on a second.
That's fair.
No, this being the third remake, and again, I'll get to this, but again, I'm really interested to hear what you think about this movie, Robert. Is that I think I'll start with this, and I think this will give Alexis a good jumping off point too. I feel like every generation has the right, even before and after us, to do their own versions of Stephen King stories that inspired them. That's why we're up to 3 versions of Salem's Lot, at least 2 versions of it. Mm-hmm. But it begs a lot of questions. So again, Alexis, back to you. You paused, so I was gonna keep that dead air moving.
Well, again, I was mistaken when I said this is a remake because it is an adaptation. This is not a remake of the miniseries. This is a new adaptation of the book. And that's perfectly fine. You know, filmmakers are welcome to do new adaptations of source material if the creative strike hits them. We've seen some really good versions of that, and we unfortunately do get a lot of incels on Twitter go, "You can't remake that. That's a classic." It's like, it's not a remake. They're not remaking the first film, especially since, again, this is the first one that isn't a miniseries. And I'll just go ahead and say it probably should have been.
Yeah, there's the biggest problem that this movie runs into, I think, is, well, you've got the book right there. Salem's Lot is not a thin novel.
It's not The Stand, thank God. I mean, that's a book that
where it's like, you can stick one of those books in your coat pocket, and if you're ever going to get shot, the bullet will, or the book will take the bullet. You'll be fine.
Oh, I prefer to give that book to the toddler so they could stand on it and reach the sink to wash their hands.
Thank you, Doug Walker.
Yeah, when I first read The Stand, I actually did read the unabridged version, and carrying that around.
That's responsible for your scoliosis, is it not?
Well, I was in, that junior high, I think. Yeah, it would have been junior high. I occasionally, if someone just kind of walked by me reading it, they'd go, "Wait, what is that, a phone book?" Because the unabridged version of The Stand is, again, it's pretty thick. But part of the issue with trying to cut Salem's Lot down into a movie, and this one only ran, it's not a long film. It's
113 minutes.
Yeah, so we're barely over the 90-minute mark, all things considered. What makes Salem's Lot as a novel, and this is what at a minimum, the original miniseries really nail, and I'll talk about the Rob Lowe one in a second, but the original one really nails the town aspect. This is about something that happens to a location, not just one or two characters.
Absolutely.
And it plays into one of Stephen King's profound gifts as a writer, which is, of course, character work and setting. He's one of the best at creating a world that feels very much like the world you're in, not just like transporting you to a different world, but his sense of verisimilitude is really, really strong. And I've heard him talk about this once or twice. Because he says, there's a thing they teach you when you're in college and you're writing, that specificity is the enemy of the reader, right? Like, there's something wrong about being specific, that being vague and a bit more purple with your prose is somehow more elevated, more literary. And what he arrived at was, no, somebody looks in their cabinet, you want to bring them into the world, they don't find pills, they find aspirin. They're not driving a truck, they're driving a Chevy. And that brings you into the world. And then you also have to find the right way to make up things that sound real, but aren't. I think the one he mentioned was, one of his favorite things to cite is the IAA, the Insurance Adjusters of America. So anytime he has to create a stat, he will use that as the thing that he cites, because it's not a real organization. But it sounds plausible enough. If I told you that existed, you'd probably just believe me, because it sounds like a thing that should. So that's one of the things that works so well for Salem's Lot as a novel, is he sucks you into this little area, and we get to watch a lot of different elements as the degradation and curse of Barlow is spreading. And that's one of the major losses in this film, is it's so short that we just plow pell-mell through anything approximating the story. And honestly, if you haven't seen either of the two previous versions or read the book, watching this is a very different experience, because it feels very disjointed. It feels like there's big chunks missing. And if you are familiar with the source material or other adaptations, this feels like a greatest hits. Because, okay, so the kid dies, and then we get the kid outside the window, because that's classic. And we get the cross lighting up. Again, classic moment. And Barlow's confrontation with Father Callahan. But all the little moments that build to make those things really resonate are absent, and it's to the detriment of the overall film. Plus, as
Absolutely.
a fan of The Dark Tower, watching Father Callahan get shortchanged really rubbed me the wrong way.
It is. I do want to point out this was directed by, written and directed by Gary Dauberman, who wrote Annabelle Creation, and The Nun, Annabelle Comes Home, and both It movies. So this guy knows good horror. You know, I mean,
don't know if there was again a budgetary constraint, or if he has more of a writing partner in the other ones that helps him out. Or if being the writer and director for this one was just a bridge too far for him.
This felt like it was put on a bullet train.
Yeah.
It felt like it was like, we need to get to the end as quick as possible. And again, having seen the old 70s one, and again, I agree with you, Robert. It's like, that first, that 70s one is all about character development. And, you get to kind of learn about people and start caring about them. Like, even when Ben's old teacher has that heart attack.
Yeah.
Near the middle of it. When he's facing the vampire, you're like, oh no, not him. We like him.
We do.
And even Bedelia, I never remember the actress name. She was John McClane's wife in Die Hard.
Yeah.
Her dad gets impaled by, James Mason. I'm going to impale you on horns. I am at this time. Yes. You feel bad for him too. This movie, I didn't really attach with any of the characters or care. Like, again,
yeah.
It's kind of cheating, I feel, in a way, because like I already know, like, obviously the old original, the OG one, and I've seen the Rob Lowe one with Donald Sutherland, so it's like I kind of already know what's going to happen, but I still want that connection with these characters now played by new actors that I just didn't feel I got this time.
No, it's the biggest problem with this movie is that the only way horror really works, is when you care about the people it's happening to. Because if you don't have that, all you have are, lest this come across like I'm completely dumping on the movie, there are some really strong visual elements to this thing.
Oh, yeah.
This movie does have some really good scares. I mean, for how short it is. Oh my God, what is the foreign guy's name who serves Barlow? What is his name? Richard Straker.
Straker.
Yeah,
James Mason's character in the original.
Yeah, we have the shot of him taking in that silhouette of him grabbing the little boy in the woods. We have the point of view of this kid in the bag. You can hear him just breathing so heavily. He's panicking. He's terrified. The one shot of I can't even remember. This is the problem. I remember the visuals.
Yeah.
If you ask me which characters this stuff happened to, I couldn't tell you. I remember one character getting grabbed by like their jaw and being pulled up in the air, and that was a terrifying scene. Now, which character was it? I got nothing.
Couldn't tell you if I had a gun to my head. That seems to be the issue with like when we remake horror movies these days, is that we'll upgrade the visuals, we'll upgrade the scares, and then we completely lose what it was that is the story that drives all this.
Yeah.
And this movie's harmless. Because I know we got 3 movies to get through. Obviously this one included. This movie's harmless. If you're a fan of the first 2, and then Robert, I'm gonna throw it back to you. Sorry, throw it back to you because you said you were gonna talk about the Rob Lowe one. But again, if you're a fan of the first 2, go ahead and watch it. It's not going to like deeply insult your love of the story or and such, but it's not something that you need to run out and go, oh man, I've loved Salem's Lot since I had it carried around, in junior high, and like, man, they did a new version. It's not anything that you need to fire a starting gun and run to get yourself to. But again, overall, it's harmless.
Yeah, the Rob Lowe one, just very briefly, ridiculously good cast, and that's kind of what carries that one. You have Rob Lowe, you have Donald Sutherland, you have Rutger Hauer. Like, you've got some really heavy hitters that came to the fore in that one. And those performances largely make that work. Unfortunately, it's badly paced. There's no 2 ways around the Rob Lowe one. It wasn't paced out properly, and on a miniseries, that's death. Like that just kills the ability to continue watching it.
Right, and like same problem with this one. Like even the first one, the original OG, 70s one is a little slow.
Mm-hmm.
But again, as we talked about, that's all about building character. We want you to care about these people, see the curse of Barlow that's being spread. You know, again, I remember the first time I watched it, I had already seen North by Northwest and the Disney's old ass 28,000 Leagues Under the Sea movie, so I knew who James Mason was. I just assumed day one, or like not day one, but like, you know, minute one, oh, James Mason, he's the villain. So then when, you know, Barlow actually shows up and he's all Nosferatu up in this shit, I was like, oh crap, second back. Oh, you're Renfield? Damn, you're scarier than our Dracula in this case. Well done, James Mason. Well, I thank you. I was trying to be more frightening. I was. But that's just for Mark because he loves that impression that I do. But yeah, with the pacing and everything, it seems like the first one suffered from it because 70s. That was TV pacing. You need to stretch everything out. Mm-hmm. The 2000s one, I'm gonna give a pass simply because like it felt like they were trying to like bow to the original.
Little too much.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I understand why they were bowing to us, like, you know, this got us off the ground. This one seemed like, fuck pacing, get to the end. And I understand it's also sorry, I'm kind of jumping train tracks here. It is my generation that's like, I want everything now, which is fair in certain cases. But, like, with a story like Salem's Lot, that is a slow burn. Much like a lot of King's really great ones, like Dolores Claiborne, The Shining, such like that, are supposed to be slow burns. It's like, let it burn slowly. I mean, everybody gave It Chapter 2 shit for being way too long, which I agree with the choices they made. But had they made slightly different choices, I wouldn't have hated it if it was as long as It Chapter 2 was, if they'd made those choices. And I felt like they had the option to do this, especially with a streaming movie.
Yeah.
I think when we reviewed It Chapter 2, we mostly just gave it shit for some of the worst CGI we had seen in ages.
Just call me Angel of the Morning.
Yeah, some of the CGI is a bit wonky in that one, and yeah, it is too long. That thing's almost 3 hours.
You're in frame.
Okay, yeah, I just love Shay just like appeared out of the freaking brick wall like the Homer meme.
It's like I have ghosts.
But yeah, to close on Salem's Lot again, I want to give a couple of other examples of some really strong visual elements because those are plenty in this.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way Barlow's made up. This is probably the best looking Barlow of the three. He doesn't look like they're desperately trying to cut around the makeup to hide some of the effects. So it's just they're able to let him sit in frame on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of really nice tension building moments that sadly get stepped on because they get paid off way too quickly. I mean, the obvious one is the time when they pull up, they're driving, they pull up, and before anyone can get out of the car, one of them stops and says, well, don't get out. There's vampires on the roofs. And everyone kind of slowly looks out and you can just see the shining eyes.
Which is a cool shot.
It is, and it's a royal shame that nothing more is done with the tension that kind of a thing can build.
Yeah, it's like that's one of those, you know, you have someone talking over the shoulder shots of each, and you have one of them start eyes getting bigger and kind of leaning back, and the person that's talking to them who has their back to the situation is like, what? And they just do that.
Yeah. And
then you pan, it's like, oh crap, we're surrounded. Now would be a good time to run.
Yeah, that the other, and as mentioned, like this is one of the higher body count stories that King puts together because believe it or not, he doesn't have a lot of like really high volume death. I mean, minorly accepting the Stand where, you know, the world ends.
Or
Maximum Overdrive.
Or the original ending of It, where Derry was basically just consumed by the earth.
Yeah, he tends to let the horror build on a much smaller, more intimate scale. Instead of, again, and I mean, even the Stand, part of the point is that the world ends in the beginning, and then it's what do we do afterwards? This one, because it has a higher body count, it winds up feeling, if you don't care about the characters, it just doesn't work because you get kind of numb to it, even with inventive kills. I mean, this is the curse of the slasher genre at some point, right? You just watch it for the inventive kills and you don't care about anything.
That was us doing the Friday the 13th marathon. It was like, we don't care about any of these characters. We just want to see them die.
Yeah, and this one runs real close to that line in a really less than a desirable way. I appreciated the finale. Actually, I thought making it the drive-in instead of, I think the novel. It's been a while since I've read it. They just had the showdown in the Barlow house for that one for them, and well, not the Barlow house. It's where Barlow is, but starts with an M, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, the climax is really good, and I love the genius idea of the sun setting behind the screen and the kid realizing if he takes out the screen, the vampires lose their ed. Again, very, very inventive.
Yeah, that's a really strong idea. It's it's visualized very well. It's just it falls short because you don't really care about any of the people that it's happening to.
And this is the first time I'm going to say this in this. I'm probably going to say it a few more times. Is that the ideas that were brought into this would work perfectly and be legendary if it hadn't been a Salem's Lot redo.
Probably.
If it had been an original thing that still had vampires, the director, I love Salem's Lot, so I'm going to do my own vampire thing. I was so inspired by that book and the movies that I saw, blah, blah, and this is how I'm going to do it. It would have been legendary, but since it's attached to something that we kind of already know, you're bringing in new members of the audience, my generation and stuff like that have not seen the originals, and that's great. But again, for the rest of the people, obviously the two people above me who've already seen both, it's like, okay, well, that part was new and cool, but anytime you do something, you redo something, you have to bring something new and exciting to it that throws off the people who have already seen it 1,000 times. As an example, the Hannibal TV show through use the books as a pathway, but then for the fans, like, I know exactly what's going to happen. Will Graham's going to walk in there. He's going to figure out it's Hannibal. He's going to arrest him, and then we're off to the races for Red Dragon. What do you mean he just stabbed Will? What do you mean Hannibal got away? No, you can't do that because the book ends like, what are you doing to me? It's like, season 3 coming. It's like, you fuckers. And that worked because it threw off the audience members that knew the original source material. And in this case, source material not only being the book, but the movies, excuse me. And this one just didn't, it brought cool scares and visuals, but didn't add anything new and any new spice to the story that we already know.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is that if you are interested and you want to see another adaptation, the 1979 miniseries is also available on Max. It's a 3-hour, 3-minute little miniseries, but you can go check that out if you don't have time to read the book.
Do read the book, though. It's been a while since I've seen the original miniseries. But one of my favorite horror segments from the book, I don't think made it into either adaptation, and it's pretty harrowing, actually. It's the school bus driver when he gets attacked by all the kids.
Oh yeah,
it's such a wonderfully realized sequence that just, I understand why from an editorial standpoint or an adaptation standpoint, if you're cutting stuff, it's an easy thing to exclude, but man, do I hate that they do it.
The first time that they did it in the 70s, they couldn't do it because of budgetary constraints.
Yeah.
The second time they did it, I believe Columbine had just happened or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the producers and censors, I actually read this in research for this podcast, had been like, dude, you're right. It's a terrifying scene, but
X-nay on the killer 8-year-old swarming the bus driver.
Yeah, read the room. Know what the country is going to react to.
Dude, show me a girl topless. I can dance with that. But you have some kids killing a bus driver.
All right. So, okay. Do we want to talk Apartment 7A or do we want to talk Mr. Crocket?
It's your show, boss.
Yeah, go ahead and pick one. I'm good either way.
Oh, for God's sakes. I'm trying to do a democracy here.
How many times do I have to
Never
tell you
stopped you
democracy
before.
doesn't
It
work?
doesn't work. Okay, fine. Let's just go ahead and talk Mr. Crocket, a film that doesn't even have its own Wikipedia page because every time I try to search for it, I get a listing for Fairly Odd Parents characters.
It took me a while to find. You sent me the right title, and it just took me it took a little bit of Googling and then scrolling to get past all that. Like, okay, no, there's the movie. There we go.
Well, I think they changed the name too, because I am like 90% certain when I saw the first trailer and sent it to Mark saying I found our third film, I could have sworn it was Mr. Crockett's World. And now it's just Mr. Crocket. So
Probably. But
yeah, Mr. Crocket came out on Hulu, directed by Brandon Espy. Say about we have a mother with a son. She has just lost her husband who died from they don't say, but I'm assuming it was cancer or something.
cancer makes sense.
They say he was very sick for a long time. So she's having a really hard time, not only dealing with her grief, but dealing with her son.
The world's worst kid. Just the world's worst.
Not to mention, they cast
Now,
him
hang on.
way too...
No, Alexis, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think they cast a way too old kid to be that bratty. Because I have seen I have babysat children that have been that level of bratty. I'm bored. Where's my Game Boy? I'm gonna wreck this if I don't get what I want. Yeah, I have dealt with the hell spawn of this earth. I have actually. There was a family at my parents' church. I was the go-to church babysitter for a long time. And there was one family, they had 3 sons, and the oldest was a good kid. But the other 2, I blacklisted. I said, no, I don't care. I am never babysitting for this family again. I'm done. I don't care how much the money they offer me. So I have been with those hellspawn.
I agree that he's bratty. However, I'm one of the things that on the non-horror side, just the storyline side, that I thought was great about the movie is that the kid is reacting, the character and also the actor playing, the character is bringing this reaction to a father has been sick for a long time. So the world has not been right or balanced for ages. And again, as young as he is, yeah, he probably kind of got whatever he wanted because it was like, hey, we got to, we got to be over here with your dad, trying to, fight this cancer. Sure, have a Game Boy, blah, blah, blah. Just using that as an example, that does not happen in the movie.
Not to be overly pedantic, but it is a Game Gear that he
right.
To make this story work, this takes place in the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
What did they say? 93, 96? I forget exactly.
93, 94, I think.
Okay.
For the only way for the story to make sense is A, VHS players still have to be a thing, and B, no internet.
Yeah. Research had to be done the old-fashioned way.
And VHS players have to be a thing that they're not looked at as like, ooh, look at it, you have a VHS player. You must be very fancy. Still keeping this, it belongs in a museum.
Yeah.
But no, what I was going to say is, one of the things I liked about the dynamic, but that was the kid and the mom, is they played really well into the parents aren't perfect, but they're trying their best. Now, that does not give a get out of jail free card to all parents. But this mom is literally, she's not perfect. She's just gotten a sledgehammer to the chest with the loss of, her husband, her partner, her teammate. And now she's kind of holding the world on her shoulders, including this kid who's also lost his father. And she's doing everything she can, but she's not perfect, which is something that a lot of movies won't go to, especially with mothers. They'll try to make the mom I am just overwrought. And oh, woe is me. And even with dads, like The Exorcist Believer did something similar where, and they use that kind of part of the storylines, like you hate, like when the demons and the kid in Exorcist Believer, they're like, you hated me, you wanted her to live and not me, you never wanted me, But I think that's also what The Exorcist Believer did well, that this also does well, is I understood where the kid was coming from. Absolutely. I also understood where the mom was coming from, going, I'm going to tear out my hair, but I'm trying not to.
Yeah. So just so everyone can understand kind of the premise at play here, Mr. Crocket is a TV show host for kids in the vein of Mr. Rogers or Not quite like that. He actually has more sidekicks than that.
I think it's almost like if Barney the dinosaur wasn't in a costume.
Yeah. There's a better reference that's escaping me. I'm sure someone else will know what it is, but so
like a
forgive
Captain
me.
Kangaroo, maybe.
Yeah. Pee-wee's Playhouse. That was it.
There you go. Yeah. So this,
he's this mystical host of that, and the VHS tape of his show gets kind of passed around, and he winds up in the hands of kids with terrible parents. The first one is a abusive stepfather, and when this happens to the kid, Mr. Crocket appears out of the TV, violently murders the offending parent, and then abducts the child. And this is kind of the thing that's repeated. There's one girl that he kidnaps whose father, parents are divorced, with her dad who is on heroin. And there's no ambiguity there. We see him start to shoot up.
We don't know. We see him passed out with a needle still in his arm.
We don't even subtext that. He did that shit.
Yeah.
There is no subtext with Mr. Crocket. If I may borrow a line from David, subtlety is for cowards.
There's that sort of famous clip from, I forget the writer, but he goes, I know other writers who use subtext. They're all cowards. There's none of that. But
no, these people just went straight in, was like, cry havoc and let's lift the dogs of war. Let's film this bitch.
But it's nice that they contrasted our protagonist mother, who is just, again, at her wit's end, but is not abusive and is not a heroin addict. And there's a lot of things she's not. She's just had it up to here with this kid who can't see past his own nose.
She's just tired. She needs a break.
She's exhausted. And again, I think that's something that was played very well. And the actor playing the mom did a fantastic job in doing that. And again, not to retread what I already said, this was an interesting family dynamic that hasn't been, in my opinion, hasn't really been done this way before. Because Five Nights at Freddy's does something similar, but they do the older brother, younger sister. I'm exhausted. I'm trying to work. I got the shitty aunt over here.
If you want the closest parallel, it's the Babadook.
Thank you. You know what? I was honestly trying to think about that right as we were getting on. I was like, there's a movie I was gonna, and I had it on my notes. My notes are on my phone, and if I go to my notes, my camera dies, and it doesn't look like I'm there. So I'm kind of bouncing back and forth. But yeah, no, exactly. And like, that's, I don't want to spend the entire time talking about this movie, talking about the mom and the kid, man. I mean, come on. But I do have a question for both of you, since both of you were alive when this movie was set. Were free VHS libraries a thing, or did they just make that shit up?
They were not a thing until the 2000s. That is, admittedly, this is not a bad movie, but it's got a lot more plot holes than the other two.
Yeah, there's a lot about this movie that doesn't work if you apply thought to it. For whatever it's worth, I don't know that there were free VHS libraries the way that it's portrayed here. At least I never came across one. But your local library would usually have movies that if you had a library card, you could check out the same way you could a book.
Which I guess it in itself counts as a free library in a way, because again, you don't pay for your library card.
The original file sharing is alive and well.
Right.
Yeah, this really could have avoided if they just had a scene of her at the library looking for a VHS for him to watch.
Yeah. And
maybe it's like she looks back and she's like, I didn't think that wasn't there before, or something like that, or we could see specifically that she walked past it wasn't there, and she looks back and it's now there.
Yeah, there's a few ways they could have handled that a little bit better than it magically appearing in the Dropbox. That didn't, this borders on Netflix, original Netflix. Like, we send you movies in the mail, and that's a little bit far-reaching, but.
Or the fact that none of these parents ask, why did someone install a free library in my front yard?
Yeah, there's that. Again, I'm willing to pass that up when it comes to the heroin addict who might just not have paid attention to anything. But there's a little bit of, I'll go with the mom again, our protagonist, because she's just so desperate for something that, you know what, this is a gift from God. I'm going to take it.
You know, I hear so many parents say they don't want to put their kids in front of screens all day. They don't want their kids to become addicted to television, to movies, to video games. And I get that. But then I have seen them basically, it's like, if I put on your favorite movie, will you let me go lie down for an hour?
Yeah, it's a really fine line to try and walk, and it gets really difficult when you're when you're alone in the equation. Like this mom is. She just needs, like, okay, I've worked a 12-hour shift. You're still bouncing off the walls. And please just let me close my eyes. And if whatever it takes to make that happen, I'm willing to do. And the longer that situation persists, the whatever it takes gets more and more and more towards the actual whatever line of the spectrum.
And can we talk very quickly about the very shitty ass twist villain they were trying to make in this movie?
Yeah, that was there.
Okay, I get that the mom is desperate, that he's the first one to believe her. And I know that when we are at the edge of our rope and desperate, our instinct to detect something is wrong really, drops. I think I made a joke about that when I was looking for work years ago, and I was just so desperate, and I got a job offer email, and I was so excited, and it took like 3 people to point out to me, that's a scam, right? I'm like, I was desperate, so I get that, but at the same time, I don't know how they could have made this dude wave any more red flags.
There is one way they could have made him wave more red flags.
Well, there's 2, but I want to hear yours.
He literally walks up with a black top hat with a twisted mustache and goes, hello. That's the only way they could have waved more red flags. Robert, over to you.
I'm just assuming that if we're going that way, we're also going to do my suggestion and make him white.
Hello, I'm the villain of this movie. I think
there's not enough. Here's the reality of this one, and it's kind of sad to say it this way, but there's not a story here for a movie. This spawned out of a short, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It did.
So it probably spawned out of something that would have been similar to our opening scene, where Mr. Crocket comes out. We get a gruesome kill, which, if there's a good thing to this movie, some of these kills are appropriately gnarly, and I thank them for that.
This movie, if it excels in anything, it is the practical visual effects and the gore. The puppetry alone is amazing. When you go to Mr. Crockett's realm, which I guess is literally hell,
you see dimension of hell,
something like that. And you've got the clock and the chair that are alive, and it's what's the monster's name? Blue, something like that.
Something. They can't say Bluey because of reasons, but
yeah, I just remember looking at this movie. It's like this thing
is gonna get all up in their face and be like, "Bitch, we got emus. We will send them at your ass."
No, this film is just visually amazing. It's very limited on CGI. They use practical effects for nearly everything. Yeah, that first death of the stepdad, getting his stomach sliced open. And again, the living chair grabbing him. I watched this last night, and after just those first few minutes, I was just like, what the fuck am I watching? It knocks you back.
Well, yeah, and what Robert said, yes, it is based off of shorts that I watched before, actually just before I came on this, because I wanted it to be fresh. And like most great horror shorts that won awards and made everyone nuts, Lights Out, Mama,
Night Swim.
When you try to,
I'll be reviewing on Monday,
right?
Yeah, you wanted to do worst of 2024 before the end of the year. This is on you, dude.
Oh no!
Look,
by the way,
Mark pitched the idea. I was willing to take the ride.
Robert,
I'm gonna burst. I'm gonna burst Mark's bubble when we do that show, because a bunch of these actually released last year, and
You know he's probably watching, right? He can hear you. The great eye is ever watchful. But no, I speaking of the worst movies of the year thing, I did finish the video for the review of Damsel that you didn't want to do, and I think you and Mark can get a good kick out of it. But no, of the movies that started out as a short and became features, the original Saw has to be the best one, because it wasn't just meant to be a short. This was James Wan and Lee Wanell meant it to be not only a short, but also their proof of concept.
Yeah.
That's why that full movie, love it, hate it, somewhere in the middle, works.
Love, for the record, love the original Saw.
Absolutely. Same here.
I own it on Blu-ray.
Gang. The issue with stuff like Mama and Lights Out, they tried hard, but they didn't sit back and go, okay, we're going to do some other movies. Let's sit with you and talk about, okay, what brought you to doing, and I'm just going to use Lights Out as an example, which again went from short to a feature. The short is terrifying.
Yeah.
That ending shot will live rent-free in my head for the rest of my goddamn life. And the issue is they don't sit with the writers and the creators long enough, because they want, it makes sense. They want to catch that train. Oh man, everyone's loving this. It's award-winning, blah, blah, blah. And they want to go forward. Instead of turning the creator and go, dude, here's what you did with 5 minutes. You did Lights Out. You won all the awards. What if we gave you 90 minutes? Akira Kurosawa, for those of you who are not film kids and nerds like I am, and our film students, Akira Kurosawa is a very famous Japanese director, once said that if you want to be a director and a writer in this business from now to eternity, you have to have ideas that come out of every orifice of your body. If a producer doesn't like this, you got to open up your hat, pull out another one and go, I got this, I got this, I got this. And I think that's one of the issues that these shorts have, is that they're fantastic in the short form, obviously, but when you try to stretch that out, it's like Play-Doh. It's going to stretch to a certain point, but eventually you're going to have holes.
Yeah.
And then you're going, well, the Play-Doh's about to fall apart. So again, I really wish they would have given the writer and director of this, who did the original shorts, this was awesome. Do us a longer form one. Have a year. Write something maybe similar in the same vein, but don't do Mr. Crocket. Which again, sadly, and this is spoilers for the next movie, of the three of these, this was my favorite.
I can see that. I think I might lean a little bit more towards Apartment 7A personally, and there's a very specific reason for that when it comes to me, though. This is just preference. Like, I'm not going to stand here on objective quality.
We'll wrap up our discussion on Mr. Crocket here in a few minutes, and then we'll move on to Apartment 7A.
I think what threw me with Mr. Crocket is I don't mind the contrast of the kitty host who goes evil. Like that's the kind of contrast that horror is somewhat based on. There's a slightly different but similar contrast, dissonance that goes with the real world about this movie that doesn't fit. And I understand that when Mr. Crocket shows up, that's when we get the carnival happy-go-lucky thing that is very, very evil, and it gets very, very dark very quickly. That I'm there for, but there's something about, and I don't know if this is a lighting or a not aspect ratio, but there's a production and a very technical element that goes into what's happening with the rest of this film. And I mean, it might even just be lens choice. But the rest of it feels visually almost like a 90s sitcom. And again, I'm just talking visuals. There's something about the way it's shot that's what it kind of evokes for me. And contrasting that with the violence and the language in particular feels. I have no problem with profanity in my films. It just feels weird here. It doesn't feel natural to what's going on, which is weird because yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that happens here that you should is a strong word, but responding with an obscenity is not out of the question. But it just again, there's something dissonant about it that I can't for the life of me put my finger on, but it just doesn't quite work outside of the scenes when it's clearly playing on the dissonance and the contrast between Mr. Crockett's kind of character and the body horror and the gore and all that fun stuff. And I wish I could say it better, but that's the closest I can get to it at the moment.
I'm gonna bounce off of you with that. One of the small issues I had with this is we keep saying Pee-wee's Playhouse or Mr. Rogers. Honestly, what this movie made me think of is the 2004 Fat Albert movie if it was a horror movie.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I didn't mind it because I felt like the cast was going all the way. They were bringing their A game. Nobody was, half-assing their acting. I'll agree with the lens choice thing, but again, as Mr. Radlich has constantly reminded me, if we're talking about a big movie like Megalopolis, fine. Bitch about like lens flares and lens choice. Other than that, I don't want to put my audience to sleep while you go through a freaking soliloquy from one of your professors at school. But yeah, it's
Anamorphic versus Panavision. Come on.
Yes, right. Why don't we talk about that for 2 hours? Everyone's gonna watch that, right?
If we did that, we would be some film student saving grace. Just know that someone would be desperately Googling and stumble across that.
I got like 6 hours to get this project done. What the hell is W2M Network's R&D show with There is a God.
There is a long running gag in the video game community that anytime you have a problem with something, you can look it up. And there is some YouTube channel with some guy in a foreign accent that you couldn't place with a gun to your head, but he has done a video solving the exact problem that you've run into.
Pretty
Right.
much.
How do I beat this boss with this build? Guy with an Italian accent he's got your back.
I think my only problem really with Mr. Crocket is it's funny because I'm joking about the whole subtlety is for cowards thing. And with the over-the-top gore and kills and practical effects, I am perfectly fine with that. I love seeing a movie go this balls to the walls with that and that they use that for their budget. Robert and I have complained endlessly about the overuse of CGI in horror films.
Yeah.
So to see a movie go like this with practical effects is great. It's some of the dialogue needed that subtlety.
It needed another run through. It needed another draft, and it needed a script doctor to come in at the end and just kind of poke at a few things.
Yep.
Specifically, Mr. Crockett's story about himself that he reads to the kids. And I was like, okay, this could be really good. And credit, I liked the use of the different animation style to tell that. I thought that was really well done. But some of the dialogue, I'm just like, this feels very amateurish. Just even the line, I sold my soul to the devil. It's like, no one writes, I sold my soul to the devil anymore. This could have been very good and very foreboding, but I felt like they were just spelling it out too bluntly.
I think if they'd taken that moment, it was like, and so I sold my soul to, well, maybe you're all a little too young to understand exactly how that works yet. And like leave it open of like, there's something other than God and the devil. I mean, that's kind of what we've been walked through, like handheld through horror movies. There's God, there's the devil, the Exorcist, all that shit. If they'd left it open to kind of like more theorizing of like, oh, is that like an eldritch creature, like H.P. Lovecraft shit? Or is it something we haven't heard about yet? That, again, I'm not saying we need a Mr. Crocket 2, but like that would have opened the door for stuff like that. My finishing thoughts, and then obviously Robert, as Mark is wont to say, take us home, baby. On this one is I would actually recommend this movie to anyone I know that's a horror fan. Of the three we had right now, if they came to me and went, okay, I want to Salem's Lot, Mr. Crocket, and Apartment 3 or 7A. Sorry. Which one should I watch? I'd be like, dude, watch Mr. Crocket.
It's probably I agree with that. It's probably the easiest recommendation out of these three. It's in no small part because this kind of horror, this like pseudo analog thing that it's got going on, is a bit more broad in appeal. And this movie, while it doesn't have the story for its runtime, is actually pretty decent about trying to keep at least something somewhat interesting on screen for longer periods of time.
Without falling, I agree, and they do it without falling into the realm of, look, jingly keys.
It's closer to that than not, but it doesn't cross the line into just pointless distraction.
Exactly.
I agree. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Of all three movies, I would say some of them obviously needed more work and some of them aren't that great, but I'm not going to say any of these three movies are bad per se. You know, if you've got a late night and you come across these and it's like, if you're curious, go ahead and watch them. I don't see any of us saying it's like, oh my God, avoid this for the love of God.
I will be throwing that line around a lot when Monday comes around. So
of course you will.
Wake me up when
there's
comes.
One of the movies on our list is called Lift. It's a heist pseudo comedy led by Kevin Hart.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing a trailer for that.
There's a Jerry Seinfeld comedy called Unfrosted that deals with, I think it's Pop-Tarts or something to do with the Kellogg's
brand. That got a lot of push from Hulu.
Yep, going to be reviewing that. There is The Outlaws, which even Pierce Brosnan's infinite charm cannot save from being just one of the worst things I've ever watched. But when your lead is the simping teenager from Modern Family, it's you got an uphill climb to begin with there.
If it helps cleanse your palate, go look up movies Blitz and The Brutalist. According to Variety, those are the two most likely to lead the Oscar nominations in 2025.
I will definitely be checking those out at some point.
And quick point, Pierce Brosnan's charm can make any movie enjoyable, even if the entire rest of it that he's not in is crap. That man shows up on screen, even all gray hair and his fucking Colonel Sanders beard. He's
got that.
Did you sit through the most recent Cinderella adaptation?
Yeah.
Bless you.
God, you're such a child.
Pierce Brosnan's like the cool grandpa that you want, because you know he's gonna bring you cool presents, and the only thing you're afraid of is when you hit teenagedom, your girlfriend's gonna be like, oh my God, your grandpa's like super hot. Yeah, well, he's James Bond, so I mean, fuck it.
Don't worry, just have him sing, and then all of that sexiness will disappear. Some of us had to sit through that scene in Mamma Mia.
Yeah, but no, he's in that and has an Irish accent for some reason. And they do make the James Bond joke. At one point, someone else is holding up a gun and say, okay, but do I at least still look cool? And a character goes, yeah, sure, you look like James Bond. Pierce Brosnan goes, which one? The response is the fifth. He goes, oh, that was a good one. Yeah.
All right. So shall we move on to movie number 3? We're already in an hour.
Yes, let us.
All right. So the third movie we watched for this triple feature is Apartment 7A on Paramount Plus. This is a prequel to Rosemary's Baby. And I enjoyed this movie, but I will go ahead and say I am like 90% sure this got started because Natalia Erica James, who directed this and wrote the screenplay, basically stood up and said, I want to do a new adaptation of Rosemary's Baby, and all studio heads said, are you freaking insane? That's never going to happen. So she had to go back to the drawing board and said, okay, what if we make it a prequel? And they're like, okay, fine, you can do that.
Well, I am not one of those people who says that, you can't remake classics. I am of the opinion, though, that if that's what you're going to try to do
it for a reason.
You better bring something other than now I get to use CGI.
Exactly.
And Rosemary's Baby is one of those that I hate to phrase it this way because it's such a weird way to say it, but if that movie got made today, it would not have the reputation it has. There's a large chunk of Rosemary's Baby that is successful because of the time and place it was created.
Agreed.
And if you're going, and it's another one of those things where if you're going to try and remake something like that, you have to those are factors you have to understand and you have to keep in mind when you try to climb that mountain, because some of these are big mountains to climb. So going with a prequel conceptually is not actually a bad idea. And
why?
Because there's space within how Rosemary's Baby goes, that the notion that she was not the first one they attempted that with is not a bad thing. It's not an uninteresting idea to try and tackle. I think where this movie starts to fall down is the too much of it plays a bit too much like Rosemary's Baby. There's a bit too much beat for beat rather than iteration, rather than, okay, Rosemary's Baby was the success. If you're the pack of Satanists, that was the successful one. So where did they go wrong before? And unfortunately, this one just, I don't think it leans hard enough into ways they may have screwed up their plan. And consequently, it just plays a bit too much like Rosemary's Baby. And that's where it falls short, because now you're inviting direct comparison rather than talking about inspiration. Making a prequel that is inspired by, people will give you a lot of leeway. Like fans, critics, they'll give you plenty of rope there. But if you take that rope and all you do is doing beat for beat replays of the original, all you're doing is making a noose with the rope they've given you.
Except this time the good guys technically win because she walks off and it doesn't happen. Kills herself and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, walks off the window. So, well, okay, yeah. So those of you who are familiar with the original Rosemary's Baby, you remember a scene. You remember a character named Terry Ginofrio who is living with the what are these? Castavets. I want to make sure I got it right. Who in a later scene we see has fallen out of a window, and it's not made explicitly clear, but we're led to believe she killed herself. And as the movie goes on, we start to get a little hints of why she may have done that. This movie actually shows Terry, how she came to know the Castavets, how she became the unwitting pawn for this coven of Satan worshipers, and what led her to take her own life. It stars Julia Garner. Better get used to her, guys. This is the girl playing Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four movie coming out.
I'll get used to that about the same time I actually start caring about any of the casting Marvel does these days, because
hey, they're trying something new, and I'm excited to see them.
I am not up here saying that it is some kind of heresy to do a female Silver Surfer.
Well, there has been female Silver Surfers.
Yeah, there's a higher order discussion to be had about, well, is it really that bright an idea to try and introduce an obscure iteration of a more notable character, or just the one everyone knows? You don't introduce Tim Drake's Robin the first time Batman meets Robin. You go with Dick Grayson for a very specific reason. And it's not something that can't ever be circumvented. and that's why that's a different discussion. But my point.
More on that argument. Tune into the first episode of R&D right here on the W2M network.
When you should go with the most well-known version of a character
Mark.
you're introducing, or a secondary one when you have a lot of source material to draw from.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And actually, Robert, before we go any further, I want to have a very quick discussion with you about, because I really wanted your ideas on this, because after I saw the movie, I don't have your phone number, and it was like, Dark30, but I was like, man, I really want to talk to him about this, but I was like, yeah, we're going to talk in the podcast. Talking about this situation of the prequel, it's being a prequel itself. And the reason I asked why was not to be pedantic. It was actually because I wanted your honest answer on this. I feel like there's some movies that deserve a prequel. I don't know how old you were when the original Star Wars came out, but that trilogy does.
That would have been before I was born.
Okay, cool. I don't want to assume and be like, oh, you're this young. You're like, oh, bless you, child.
Robert, David, and I are all the same age.
Gotcha. Okay, so using Star Wars as an example for a moment, the original trilogy, episodes 4, 5, and 6, we see and hear about Anakin Skywalker before he became Darth Vader. So episodes 1, 2, and 3, hate him or love him, or somewhere in the middle, there is an actual reason to have those questions answered. It's like, how did this person that was this, horrific villain who then redeemed himself become this in the first place? The question needs to be answered. In my opinion, and this is where I want the discussion with you, and this is the exact question I'm asking, with things like Apartment 7A or earlier this year's The First Omen, especially since it's horror and the scariest things are the things we don't know, why did this need to exist? Why did we need to know what happened to this character who is kind of just briefly talked about in the OG Rosemary's Baby film? Why do we need that?
Well, if you allow me to throw another example in there of times when this is not necessary and doesn't work very well, because...
I'm sorry, you guys go ahead. I'm just going to go start reading this.
Cool, knock yourself out. You're the host. That's your job. You're like, okay, these two fight, and I'm gonna catch up on reading.
But I mean, there was that version of The Thing that was all about the Norwegian.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel bad for that movie, having learned more about it.
Right.
More so that because, especially when the directors mentioned, like, yeah, I really wanted to do nothing but practical effects wherever possible, and the studio was like, man, this looks too 80s. And he kind of went, well, that's kind of the point. But instead they went CGI, and it's a big mess. But that's another one that's like, okay, something bad happened to those Norwegians. Do we need to see it? Because we know it's easy enough to infer that what happened there is basically what happened at the primary research station we follow.
Yeah.
So
completely agree.
When it pertains to this one, I think the reason I'm more okay with this one is it doesn't actually answer all that many questions that you would find scary about the setting and the situation of Rosemary's Baby. There's not a big, like, okay, this is how they called up the demon. There's not a big, this is the demon's name, this is the demon's personality. There's a bit more shown of it than there was in the original because they have a bit more budget and they can play around with a little bit more of that. But it's still kept very there's still plenty of mystery there.
Yeah.
And to the question of need, I struggle to see the need for it, but it's the kind of space in the mythology and in the story where if the writer, director, if there are people out there who have the talent and have the burning desire, if something about it speaks to them that this needs to exist, that's the kind of space where I'll take the ride with you. I'll criticize it when I think it falls down, but this isn't trying to do a whole prequel about Han Solo's golden dice. This is something about this story and about this setting and everything spoke to a writer director, and they found a space within the story to play. This isn't Ridley Scott saying, here's where the aliens come from, and removing the mystery and the existential portion of why that is supposed to be horrifying. I will argue the xenomorphs are still scary, even knowing they're biologically engineered by Michael Fassbender, because they'll still rip your face off.
Right.
But there's an element of the horror that is lost when you explain that. This one it had a very difficult needle to thread, and to the point of the film, it doesn't very effectively. But in concept and in premise, the group trying to create the Antichrist, having failures before their success, I think if I were to try and pitch this, now again, this was not something that needled in the back of my brain forever about how I might do this, but spitballing here, I wouldn't take a character we knew. I would have gone back another 10 years.
I agree.
Set this in the 50s. Or like late 50s, early 60s, because this is set in 65.
Yeah, like, and with what you're saying, like, kind of frame it in that idyllic, 50s picket fence style thing.
Well, we're still in New York, so 50s New York, but you can play with you can do the Mad Men kind of setup, right? You can do the 50s aesthetic. Play it there instead of so have this be full of more failure. Like I would have them making I would have the Coven making a bunch of slip ups. I constantly not comedic levels of screwing up. We don't want to lean into this. Is Abbott and Costello meet Rosemary's Baby.
Sorry, you beat me for like 1 second. I'll be like, hey, how bad? I'll do not have the Antichrist, dude. Shut up.
Yeah, we don't quite want to go that far, but maybe have this be the first time the pregnancy takes, and have them be like, oh, well, now what? Like, we've tried and it's never worked, and honestly, I didn't expect to get this far. Oh boy.
It's like that Wile E. Coyote moment, one of the episodes where he actually finally catches the Roadrunner and he's got him, and then he holds up the sign and goes, okay, I've caught him. Now what do I do with him? Yeah.
That's kind of how I would have played this one, instead of having it be so closely linked with Rosemary's Baby, but that's me. And that's the angle I might have approached with it. On the positive side for this movie, before we get into some of the negatives, costuming is all excellent, all appropriate. And the casting, bless the casting director for finding people who looked so much like the actors in the original. Because that's what you're doing here. You're making 1-to-1 with these characters, so they have to look right.
They don't offer we got for actual casting directing, but they should.
Yeah.
Just for this next year in 25, it's like, and the new honorary Oscar for casting directing goes to this person because, damn, you kicked your own ass, and I hope you got paid really well for this.
I was going to say, give massive credit to Diane Wiest and Kevin McNally, who are playing the Castavets, replacing Ruth Gordon and City Blackmore. They played the characters in the original. One of the things I didn't watch the whole
Diane Wiest in particular.
Yeah. Okay.
Voice.
One of the things I did after watching Apartment 7A was I didn't watch all of Rosemary's Baby, especially since I just found out my husband hasn't seen it. And I consider that, well, a sin. So I basically said, okay, no, not funny. We're watching this next week. You don't get to bitch. I'm making you watch this. But I pulled up the scene where
I assume the ending.
No, when Rosemary and Guy come across Terry's corpse. I think part of me just wanted to know how closely they got to that scene, and
almost shot for shot. Like it is almost comical how well that's recreated. Like.
Yeah, but that scene ends with the Castavets. So now we find out they looked like they were coming home from something and they didn't know what had happened. Now we find out they did. But yeah, you hear Minnie and them talking and it's like, oh my God. Diane Wiest has always been a phenomenal actress. No question. But I was just like, holy shit, she nailed how Minnie sounded in the original. It was incredible.
And again, to Wiest's credit, when she turns to be intimidating and menacing, on a dime, and it's
Mhm.
believable. And
Yeah, that was actually the most terrifying thing of the entire movie was that, again, those moments when she would do that was like,
yeah,
Jesus.
the haircutting scene when she goes from being I'm upbeat, and it's you stand right here, and she just kind of slowly you see it all
You gotten
drop.
everything you wanted. Why? Yeah, just like, oh my God, she really, that was
Like,
incredible.
2 fingers work, you know.
It's a question of faith. Do you have faith in your fingers?
That scene when Terry threatens Julie's the actress. Terry tries to stab herself.
It's
And
lower, dear.
here, baby, don't like that. Just, oh my God, she pulled that off so well. Kevin McNally, who also was amazing. I always forget how good he is because the only thing I recognize him from was playing Gibbs in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but he really excelled.
That guy's he's one of those guys who's been around forever, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for him in the Pirates movies because it gave him more exposure. But he's been one of those guys you're just always happy to see pop up in any given project.
Well, he's one of those fantastic character actors that you know is working all the time and is like living comfortably, and he folds himself into roles so well that you'll fall into his characterization of a character, and it's not until he turns and does something you go, holy shit, it's Gibbs, fuck.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we also have Jim Sturgis. Glad to see he was able to salvage his career after Cloud Atlas.
Hey man, he was in Across the Universe. He was fantastic, and you know that's his like on credit cards. Like, hey, I was in that movie, and I sang really well and did really good. So you gotta let me, please.
But no, he's really good as this Broadway producer who is basically the one who gives the date rape drug to Terry. Can we talk about how well done the hallucination scene is when she essentially is brought down to the ceremony?
It's good, among them, but Robert, you go ahead.
No, go ahead. I talked a lot earlier. You're good.
It's done well, and I as a filmmaker, I salute it. It does feel in the same way like if I was Eric Clapton's son, or I was being trained by Eric Clapton, and the riff he does during his song Layla, and I came to him and was standing right next to him, and with my own guitar did the same riff, but I added 7 or 8 more notes to each chord. That's what it felt like, because it felt like the same hallucinatory scene from the original Rosemary's Baby when the devil is raping her. I apologize. Should have said trigger warning first to anyone just listening audio.
We've got the disclaimer at the front. You're generally okay.
Fair.
Yeah,
Again,
folks, we're talking about a woman who is. Yeah, folks, we're talking about a woman who was drugged to create the Antichrist. So if there's something about sexual assault that is going to trigger you, we apologize in advance. You may want to tune out now.
But it's it just felt like someone was putting more notes into a riff that already worked. Which again, as a prequel, I guess is fine, but visually, again, as a creator, I'm like, man, that's awesome. I know how you did that. I know how that trick worked. That's fantastic. But I was going, the OG one did it better, and it scared me more.
I'm more willing to go along with this one for a couple of reasons. The big one being this is how that character is reacting to it versus how Rosemary is reacting to it. And this is also, this is just one of those things that you can't get around when you're talking about something in this, when you're inviting these kind of comparisons. No disrespect to the lead actress here, but you ain't the original Rosemary, and that's not a hurdle almost anyone is going to clear. So it's not like that's some damning indictment. But her character reacting to it that way, again, I'm more okay with that going along with it. This iteration of that sequence, I would bet you money that there are people out there who find this one more scary than the one from the original. And I think that's largely going to come down to preference and what kind of visual style triggers that kind of fear response.
There was a cut scene, by the way, that ties directly into this. She is a dancer who was trying to get, discovered and stuff like that. There was supposed to be a scene where she was taken advantage of in a kind of casting couch situation. And apparently it was argued over and over again in pre-production and filming. And they were like, listen, man, after the Weinstein stuff, after the Cosby stuff, I get where you're coming from, but we just can't. I think I'm, going back to the whole school bus with the,
I'm gonna kind of err with the producer on that one, believe it or not. I can understand the creative impulse for it, and it actually would create an interesting
juxtaposition and dynamic.
Well, not only that, but, and I really hate to phrase it this way because it's more than a little bit gross, but since that's kind of the direction this would have gone, it does create a bit of a, well, wait, who's the father thing that you could have played off of for a bit of the movie before the supernatural stuff really kicks in.
I was going to say, that's what I preferred about this, is that they're trying to play it up that Alan, that's Jim Sturgis's character, is the one who slept with her. He says, like, I had such a great time with you last night, the next day, and he's in his robe. So yeah, we're led to believe that she just couldn't hold her liquor and they slept together. And I do like how the dream sequence, you see him dancing with her, you see him holding her, and he's wearing the tux. In her mind, Alan is the one that's doing all of this. And I like, again, we know, because we've all seen Rosemary's Baby and we know where this is going. We know the truth, but we could see it from her perspective. She's essentially putting two and two together. She's like, something's going on. I feel like someone is being with me. Well, what could it be? Could it be the man that I was just flirting with, who was helping me because I fainted from the drinks? Or is it Satan?
Yeah. I think where this movie really kind of falls down, and this is the brilliance of the original, by the way, that this one just fails to live up to. The original has this wonderful growing tension throughout the whole thing that you're never quite sure what angle it's going to go, whether she is just getting a little bit more paranoid, whether, do you really see what you think you saw? And a lot of the freaky stuff is in the style of most 70s horror movies. It's fairly quick, and it's I don't mean fully in the background, but it's not foreground material. This movie tries to follow that. Unfortunately, there's a real, I don't mean to be insulting to the filmmaker when I say the following. That is a skill to keep that kind of tension building throughout a film, is a skill that is not present here. And when you're trying to make a movie that is predicated upon, you're going to fall down. And that's where this movie falls down.
Well, and also remember that, again, the director herself may have had, again, with the scene I talked about being cut, may have had directions she wanted to go, and the producers and executives were like, no, we want to do this. Remember how, again, referencing another YouTube channel, Mr. Ryan George, who does pitch meetings. There's several times he'll make a joke of like, I'll use the Fantastic Beasts movie, Secrets of Dumbledore. It's like, so we're going to get to see Hogwarts? Yes, sir, we are. Put McGonagall there. Well, where this is set, sir, she's not born for another 8 years. Put McGonagall there. Everyone loves McGonagall. Yeah, but what you're not understanding, sir, is she's not born for another 8 years. Put McGonagall in there. That same situation may, in a different way may have happened here. Alexis, quick question. How long did you want this podcast to go? Because I do have a chunk of stuff I want to say on this, but I don't want to step on everyone else's time.
Mark never gives me a, make sure you clock it in. It's so-and-so time. I just wanted to make sure we didn't spend like an hour and a half talking about Salem's Lot, and then we only had 2 things to say about Apartment 7A, because that kind of ruins the point of a triple feature.
Fair play.
So, I mean, we're currently going at an hour and 20. If there's still stuff you want to talk about, I see no need to jump off. Robert, what do you think?
No, I'm good. Take as much time as you feel necessary.
I have a little bit of a tear on this one.
All right.
And I want to go on it. And again, obviously, Alexis, it's your show. Sorry. Alexis,
I was going to say, should I get my book out again?
No, again, what I was going to say is I want both of you to interrupt me if you have questions on what I'm about to say.
All right.
This movie upset me. Not in its context, not what it did, but in a fundamental sense. And this is me as a filmmaker. When I first heard about Apartment 7A, I didn't know it was a prequel to Rosemary's Baby. And I think the poster that we have up in the background, for those of you watching visually, as those of you watching audio-wise, it's a dark foreground with a kind of nasty green background to it, and then
if you've seen the original poster for Rosemary's Baby,
it looks
the silhouette with the baby carriage. Instead of the carriage, you have a woman standing in a bit of a crucifix position.
Crucifix / ballet.
Yes, it's Reveille.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's supposed to be remnants of both Terry's dancing and the church. So
exactly. This director is fantastic in how she directs her actors, how she frames her shots, working with her director of photography. And I will agree, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was, Alexis, was it you who said that, Robert, you said that it feels like she wanted to do Rosemary's Baby as a remake, and they went.
No, that was me.
That was you, okay.
That was the original pitch.
That was me making an assumption and turning it into a joke. Because
okay.
I how many times have we seen a movie and it's like it was clear that the writer, director, whatever, had an idea for something and the studio said no, or the studio made them edit it into something else. Because so much of this movie, again, is very beat for beat Rosemary's Baby. It's still really scary and still has some really good moments that are very uncomfortable, as the original movie is, but it's uncomfortable in the same way that Rosemary's Baby was. This movie, if you're looking for something completely different than the Roman Polanski film, which there adds another level of uncomfortable, you're not going to get it. But if you like what made Rosemary's Baby so scary, and that's the kind of scary you like, you will like Apartment 7A.
Actually, exactly true. Here's the problem. With all the genius that I saw from the director in this one, what upset me was this didn't need to have anything to do with Rosemary's Baby except for being a inspiration. Breaking down some of the biggest fandoms of all time. Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry has a quote, and I will read here. I was a huge fan of the show Wagon Train. I had watched every episode of it and thought, what if we did this? We dealt with the same issues and of morality and morality and understanding, but we did it in a different way. Star Trek, the original Star Trek, TOS, is Wagon Train in space. Star Wars being, I actually looked up a statistic. I wasn't going to use it, but since we're here, Star Wars fans actually outnumber Trekkies by 2%. It's like that much, and it's hilarious. Star Wars is George Lucas.
Give Disney another 4 years with Star Wars. That'll shift.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, shift in what direction? That's the problem.
Shift in favor of Trekkies. Not that Paramount's been doing a whole lot of great stuff with Trek either.
But again, with Star Wars, it's George Lucas watching all the samurai films, very specifically Akira Kurosawa, and turning this into space opera. That's Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Doctor Who, which is based off basically a road trip between a grandfather and his granddaughter and her boyfriend. That's why the first season of Doctor Who was like that. There's more to go into, but we don't have the time. This was all inspired by stuff. And one of the longest standing and newest, Indiana Jones, is based off the fact that Steven Spielberg wanted to do a James Bond movie. He wasn't able to because they're like, going off British, so you can very quickly saw it off. George Lucas comes to him with this idea. And it is based off the Flight of the Condor movie with Charlton Heston, the 50s DuckTales cartoons, or sorry, not cartoons, but the comic books. Even the ball chasing Indiana Jones, as well as the grabbing the hat and pulling it back out before it gets crushed, all comes from that comic book. Because these creators took things that they loved and that inspired them and created something new. Mr. Crocket notwithstanding, the biggest, and I'm going to give Salem's Lot a pass because of the whole, it's a Stephen King thing. We all got the chance to say what we want about Stephen King and the stories that inspired us. But
King's like Shakespeare. Everybody gets a shot.
Exactly. The issue with Apartment 7A, this would have been an amazing story if it didn't have to do with Rosemary's Baby. Do anything else. When they tell you, I want to remake Rosemary's Baby. No, you can't do that. Okay, figure something else out. The ideas that were just there in this story that they told in Apartment 7A could have gone in so many different other directions. First of all, again, as a joke, the casting director wouldn't have worked so hard having to watch every frame of Rosemary's Baby going, okay, which actor looks like that? Gray hairs forming at the side. But what upsets me the most about creators and the people who do this is the fact that, again, everyone on this podcast that I have run into is a creative person in one way or the other. We sit here in judgment of these movies, which, again, is our job.
I would say, are you about to go full Anton Ego on us?
No. It's a job that, well, again, actually, since you brought that, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, you're not wrong. The job of a critic is very easy. We spit at one thing, we like another, but we're putting no effort forth ourselves. I actually didn't think that, but thank you. But
well, that's got his letter, his bit at the end has one of my favorite lines, which is ironic considering that I do a lot of criticism. But I think it's important that you keep perspective if you're going to do criticism properly. When he says that, the most useless invention of anyone ever is of infinitely more value than the critic's words decrying it as such.
Yes.
It's not, I don't think that is literally true, but there is a degree of truth within that sentiment that needs to be remembered.
And constantly remembered is like, with Apartment 7A, if it had been anything else, not attached to Rosemary's Baby, it would have been fantastic. And that is one of the things that I think we run into as a problem. Again, all the fans of the show who are watching right now, creative, or even if you just love movies, and you don't have a creative bone in quote unquote, bunny rabbit ears in your body. We've got to start telling Hollywood we don't want constant remakes and prequels. We want new, exciting stuff. In 1981, when Raiders of the Lost Ark comes out, it wasn't called Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark at that time. Everyone was excited. This was a fun new adventure film that was brought to us by one of our greatest minds. We just keep retreading things, and we can't keep doing that because, again, it's not just us. There's other shows that are going, why the fuck did we do this? And the saddest part is that there's so much time and work put into all three of these movies. But since we're on Apartment 7A, the cinematography is fantastic. The lighting, it is beautiful. And I'm sorry, I'm talking way too fast at one time. Partially because I want you guys to be able to interrupt me, but I want to be able to get a thought, fully.
Just enjoy your soapbox.
I think movies like Apartment 7A are a call to arms, not violently, but for those of us who are creative, that when it upsets us or it bugs us that this is like, why did we need this? Again, Robert, you and I were talking about this earlier. Why did we need a prequel to Rosemary's Baby? I used The Omen. Why did we need the first Omen? Okay, yes, you said it yourself that this inspired that creator. Okay, well, let it inspire you and take it in a different direction. I feel like that's why we don't have any original things hardly anymore, is because, yes, we're going to have to go up against executives that like, oh, dude, this ain't going to make any money. But if you come to the pitch meeting going, Imagine Rosemary's Baby, but this, and again, I don't have a pitch to hand at the moment, but again, I think Apartment 7A would have worked so much better if, again, the director had been like, hey, I love Rosemary's Baby, and I'm going to go in this direction with it. And even kind of screwing the execs over, going, man, that sounds like Rosemary's Baby. Yeah, here's all the money. And we get this film very much like Hereditary. Hereditary was, even in some of its reviews, as this generation's Exorcist. In a way, it was.
The inspiration is very clear in that one, and I don't mean that as an insult.
No.
I still can't. It still takes a lot of alcohol for me to watch anything by Ari Aster. That man's got a talent for making you just lose all the color in your face.
And as a secondary, because we're talking about Rosemary's Baby, if you wanted to make a film that would remind people of the original, since it was so many years ago, if Apartment 7A had never happened, I would show someone Mother by Darren Aronofsky. I know the one you're talking about.
Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah.
I hate to say I didn't like that movie just because I am not a fan of artists who take symbolism and smash it into your face, going, "Get it, get it, you get it." And frankly,
that's me what it means.
Exactly, and that's what I thought Mother was.
By the same token,
well, Mother's hang on. What you're talking about is the difference between symbolism and allegory, and Mother is an allegory. And that's a distinction that I understand people have a problem with, but as long as you understand that's what's going on, then but you have to be willing to buy into allegorical stories when you go see them.
I like art that you can. I would say that's the thing I love about art, and why I love modern art so much is I love the idea of someone can take one thing from it and another person can take another thing from it. That's what I strive for in my artwork, which you can see a little bit behind me. I love the idea that it's not the same. What'd you say?
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
If I've got my paintings behind me, I'm gonna mention them at least once in a while.
No, it's fine. That's gonna call it a shameless plug.
But yeah, I do not like allegorical stories that do not leave any room for interpretation. Those kind of stories, I remember doing an art show once. I had my paintings out and this girl had these paintings and it was so obvious what she was going for. She had this one painting of a girl looking into a mirror, but the reflection looking back at her was like a gremlin or a demon or something. And she had all this stuff on her dresser showing that her problems. And I was just like, I can't get into it because you are not giving me a chance to look into what it could mean to me. You are beating me in the face with what it's supposed to represent. And I don't like that.
And that's absolutely fair. Wrapping up and I'll get off the pulpit here, is I feel if we took ideas like that we wanted to, again, with I used Hereditary, which has connections back to The Exorcist. If we want to remind people of a movie that touched us or scared the ever living shit out of us, we have to do it in a direction that we walk a similar path, but not the exact same one. So that by the end of the movie, the audience members who also loved, in this case, The Exorcist, you show it to someone who was like, man, Hereditary was awesome. I love that. Well, if you love that, let me show you The Exorcist.
My hunch is there's more crossover between Exorcist fans and Hereditary fans than Exorcist fans and any of the Exorcist sequels.
I would sadly agree, except for maybe Exorcist 3 Heretic.
Well, 3 has one of the best jump scares in movie history, but
right.
Yeah. 3 has its moments. I mean, not to mention the scene with the Gemini killer freaking out the detective in the cell is always going to be insanely haunting.
Oh yeah, and again, seeing the priest from the first one, that when he opens his mouth and it's like all those screams come out and he closes his mouth and goes, I do that rather well.
But yes, the nurse bidding a farewell to her spinal cord. That is a very iconic horror movie moment.
Well,
but
let me join Dorian on the soapbox for just a second, because he's touching on something that we talk about on Damn You Hollywood pretty frequently, and it gets brought up from time to time on these shows. And as mentioned, we are far from the only ones to notice this trend. I mean, occasionally Mark and I like to joke that we're ahead of the curve, and we might have been technically on this one like 8 years ago, because even back then we were like, I'm not sure this is the direction we're going to be happy going. And then 5 years later, that sentiment really starts picking up steam. But the real problem is an intersection, and not to say that I have a solution for this, mind you, but there's 3 factors intersecting that wind up getting us to this very unhappy place. One is, to be blunt, money. Most movies, not even Marvel budget movies, which, cost the gross domestic product of Argentina sometimes, as we like to joke. Certainly anything in Central America as a general rule. So there's a lot of money at stake, and that makes everyone involved risk averse. Some cases understandably so, but that's just the way it is. And when you're risk averse, that means you lean on known quantities. So the more you can lean on a known quantity, hey, here's a thing. Thing was already successful. Therefore, we're more likely to lean on this thing, especially if I'm going to risk $80 million. And the third leg of this stool that unfortunately gets us to this point is the writers and directors, the creative element of this, being fans of the material that they're kind of wanting to work, if you come to a studio and say, here's my idea for something, it's inspired by ... And the studio executive then goes, well, you're inspired by thing, made a lot of money. Looks at you. How about you do something don't do something inspired by ... Do a prequel, sequel, remake, do something like that. And creative, who was very inspired by ... is now giddy to do something ... instead of whatever they originally had. And again, my estimation, that's the unholy union, the unholy trinity that is conspiring to drive us down the path that we're going on right now.
No pun intended.
Not really. If you want another look at this, at that topic, there's I forget how long the video is. It's not very long because the YouTube channel doesn't make very long videos. But Tail Foundry released a video today that's about nostalgia horror. And it's worth a watch. Again, it's like 15 minutes or so. And Tail Foundry does good work anyway. So on the off chance you're not familiar with them, go give them a look. But they talk a little, that movie talks about kind of what we're dealing with here. And yeah, Shay is not wrong. Hollywood creates its own cyclical problem. And then gets stuck in it because now we have to get out of the problem that we're in. So we're going to spend more money and we're going to be even safer and get further away from. This is the Marvel situation at the moment. And I only say that because it's the biggest, not because it's the only one. Star Wars is in a similar place. We can go on and on.
Well, since I know we're going to be wrapping up, since we've now covered all 3 movies, I would like to offer a challenge to everyone on the W2M network. Especially those who cover movies. Those who just cover boxing, if they don't, or mixed martial arts, if they don't want to be involved, fine. We are now in the middle, or about to be the middle of October. I would encourage and challenge every member of the W2M network who sees, it was a creative anyway, to by this time next year, make their own short film. You don't all have to call me to be the director. This is not a, let me get all the money.
Oh, so you shameless pimp.
No, see, that's the thing.
No. This is, that's not pimping because it's himself. Hang on. There's a technical legal term for drawing that to yourself unfairly. And I forget what it is.
Okay. A whore, you shameless whore.
Might be, but yeah, that's not pimping. He's not selling someone else's services and taking a cut.
Okay, fine.
That's why I said I'm not saying everyone come to me directed. But again, by this time next year, we all make at least a 5 to 10 minute film. Those of us who actually want to, because if you don't want to, that's fine. I'm not going to force anyone in the director's chair behind the camera. But pick your genre that bugs you the most. You know, this is supposed to be an unholy trinity thing, and all of us love horror. A horror film that answers the questions and deals with the issues we have, both behind the scenes, well, not behind the scenes in the sense of like drama, but like camera, choice of lens, blah, blah, story, and also in front of the camera and acting, that we could actually put on here so that we put ourselves in front of the firing squad as we've put all these movies. Now, again, many of these movies deserve to be put in front of the firing squad. I think it's the Riff Tracks company line of Riff Tracks. Some movies had it coming.
True.
So I would like to, again, on a live stream, challenge every member of the WPM network to do it that wants to. By this time next year, pick your genre, make your own short film.
All right.
And no, my video didn't freeze.
No, that
Okay.
that's not an unfair. That's not an unfair challenge, or at least put forward, at least work on something. You know, there's Brandon Sanderson, I heard say this, and I don't know if he was paraphrasing someone else, but I liked the way he phrased it. Because one of the things he does every year is teach a creative writing course at a local university, and he said part of his pitch for that is not everyone who comes to this is going to be a professional author. But the act of writing stories can make you can be an exercise in self-improvement. Even if nothing is ever published, even if the only one who ever sees it is your writing group, the act of doing it has merit, even if it's just the journey and not the destination.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and start bringing this to an end. So, if I'm guessing this correctly, then Dorian, you said Mr. Crocket is your favorite of the three, and Robert, I'm going to go on a limb here. You said Apartment 7A is your favorite of the three.
Maybe a little. It's not the one I would recommend the hardiest. I'm going to join Dorian in saying Mr. Crocket is the easiest recommendation. Apartment 7A, it kind of scratched an itch I've been having because it's rare we get movies done in that 70s style. And that, don't get me wrong, that's part of why this one falls down. But even the attempt to just do something different than the modern aesthetic and the modern sensibilities of filmmaking, I was deeply appreciative of. Especially now that I'm watching a bunch of comedies for our movies podcast on Monday. Oh boy.
I would say Apartment 7A is probably my favorite. Mr. Crocket is definitely the easiest to recommend. You guys aren't wrong, but it is lacking in the story.
Can I break in really quick and say it's almost not fair to do that because, again, Salem's Lot and Apartment 7A...
Hang on, are we still on? Freaking...
You froze for a minute there.
Damn internet. Okay.
Not by a whole lot.
All right. Yeah, Salem's Lot, despite having some really good scares and some great acting, definitely would have benefited from being made into a miniseries.
They could have just given that 30 more minutes and they would have been able to solve a lot of problems, and you've still got a movie that's within the appropriate runtime.
Some Stephen King stories you're just not going to be able to chop up enough to get into a feature-length film, guys.
True.
Although, let's be honest here, though. Again, wrapping up is that both Salem's Lot and Apartment 7A are both attached to already existing IPs.
Yeah.
Intellectual properties. Mr. Crocket of the three is the only one that comes from a new original point of view, and I think that gives it a little bit more standing because you don't have anything to come from other than what it's inspired by.
Yeah.
With Salem's Lot and Apartment 7A, you have a whole bunch of, fan theories in the original movies or movie and such. So there's also that to consider.
That's true.
I'll give you that. All right. Was there anything else now that we've all had our chance on the soapbox? And
since we did talk a little bit about Stephen King, let me ask. Hang on, just let me ask a very simple question. Don't have to be long.
Is it?
'Cause
Are we going to review the monkey when it comes out next year?
Well, of course, but it's a fairly simple question. One Stephen King story can have already been made or not, your choice. But if it was announced tomorrow that there was going to be an adaptation of blank, what would be your personal choice? What's the one you want to see done the most, maybe? Again, could be one that's already been adapted and you think it deserves a second shot. That's actually the one I have picked, but just which one would you be most interested to see? Because I have like 2 or 3 directions I could go, but I went with one that's already been made, and I just think it deserves another shot at being made well.
Dorian, you go ahead and take the lead on that one. I need to look up a little bit of source material here.
She's only doing this because she knows exactly what my answer is going to be.
Yes, I do. Now just shut up and say it.
I would go with The Shining.
Okay.
I would love to remake that. Actually, personally, being the I'd love to work with Stephen King and like write the script together and obviously direct it. Partially because The Shining speaks so much to me. The original book, having lived with someone who was a violent alcoholic, and also with being adopted, got to be very clear about this. My legal guardians were not great, and one of them was an alcoholic. The other one was like, who gives a shit? You know, hey, I'm not getting hit, so welcome to hell. So to me, the book, when I read it, was very important to me because it is a redemption story that I believe has to happen in horror from time to time. It's definitely not still a happy ending, but it's enough that there is that redemption there, and where Stanley Kubrick's 1980s version nailed the scares and the geographical fuck with your head of how the hotel worked and such, and the Alexis, help me out here. The TV miniseries came out in 90.
I'm sorry, you think I actually paid attention to that? That thing drags so much. I ignored it.
Okay, so there was a TV miniseries they made in the 90s with Steven Weber, where they did the characters a lot better, but lost the scares. I would love to see an adaptation, even if I'm not in the center seats or even involved at all, that melded what was great about Kubrick's and great about the TV miniseries, because that one, for personal reasons, is very near and dear to my heart.
Well, to anyone who really loved the ending of the original of the Shining novel, I think that's what you really love about the Dr. Sleep movie adaptation is they get that's the ending they do basically. My personal gripe with that, and I said this when we reviewed it, tacking Jack's ending onto Danny just didn't feel right to me. And so that's my gripe with it, but I get where that comes from. And I'm one of those rare people maybe who enjoys both. I enjoy the book and the movie, and I just understand that they're different, and you go to them for different reasons.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would say the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, Alexis.
I'm going to sound weird for saying this because it has been adapted many times, and I don't think it's had a successful adaptation yet. Children of the Corn.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I love a good horror story where the unsuspecting protagonist runs afoul of a cult. I love the brainwashing attitude of the cult because it's not a group that you can reason with. It's not you can play on their sympathies. They are of a mindset, and you have essentially encountered a force of nature within these people. And I love Children of the Corn, the short story, because that force of nature, the cult, is children. And you have Bert and Vicky who are just like, okay, it's kids, it's no big deal. And they realize quickly they are out of their depth. It is a force of nature that they thought they could handle, and they can't, and they don't.
There's a weird thing that goes on with that story that I deeply appreciate. And it actually forces you to consider the question, how many 8-year-olds could you beat in a fist fight? And now give them weapons. Now give them knives and farm implements, and it's one of those.
I'm so sorry. I have godchildren, and some of them are around that age. So the minute you said that, I was like, I don't want to be thinking about this. Like, I don't want to be thinking about finding my 8-year-old goddaughter, but now she's got a freaking sickle in her hand.
It's uncomfortable to think about, but
that's the point of horror.
It is. It's the point, and it's such a good thing to do because once you hit like 17, 18, and you start, and there's enough physical disparity, you stop looking at people like that as some kind of physical threat.
Mm-hmm.
But there should be something in the back of your head the whole time, like, okay, one, sure, that kid's got a knife and I've got to deal with it. It's a knife, it's scary, but that's an 8-year-old, and I'm 6'1" and I'm 220 pounds, and I actually know how to throw a punch. What if there's 5 of them? And they've all got knives. What does that do to your math? Like, suddenly things start getting uncomfortable in a lot of ways. Shay's recommendation there for Eyes of the Dragon is one that has not been adapted. I actually agree. I think that would be that's a very good choice. I'll cheat my own answer a little bit and go with 2. One that hasn't been adapted, one that has. Unadapted would probably have to be a limited series, not a movie, but I would love to see Stephen King's Insomnia brought to life because I very much enjoy that story.
Just with a new title, just so it doesn't confuse people on the 2 that are standing.
Fair enough. You might have to come up with a slightly different title for it.
Sleepless.
Even if all you did was Stephen King's Insomnia, that could be enough to avoid some of the confusion. But I'm a Dark Tower junkie. I love that series and consequently hate the movie, but
everyone hates that movie. That they botched that so badly.
It is a miracle that movie is as watchable as it is, considering how much development hell it went through.
Skarsgård and Elba deserve better.
I don't hate that movie. I actually like that movie.
That movie also was like, it's a waste of casting. I mean, McConaughey's the right guy for that role, but that was not the right written role. But the one I would like to see that I know has been adapted, and I just think it needs a better adaptation, Desperation.
Not familiar with that one.
Yeah, you're right.
Because I like the story. It's fun, and the movie, bless them, they tried, and Ron Perlman is the best bit of casting in that thing, and bless him, because Ron Perlman.
Oh God, is that the one with the demon and the little kid who wants to be a preacher, and they're in a jail or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I saw parts of that, and the amount of just over Christianity, and it just was like, this is Stephen King.
Well, in the original story, the deal with that kid is not he wants to be a preacher. It's he has occasionally heard the voice of God.
Yeah.
And it plays with just a lot of things in there, and that character is very overtly again theistic Christian. Some of the other characters aren't, and I like this premise and I like the story, and I would just love to see that one get a shot at a better adaptation than the one we got.
Okay. Yeah, no, I would dance with that.
Yeah. And yeah, Ron Perlman definitely deserves better.
Frequently. But he also gets paid, so he's not complaining.
And he also got saved from having to be in The Crooked Man.
Dude, look, man, he got to play a crusader with Nicolas Cage in a very weird movie called Season of the Witch that is actually kind of a guilty pleasure of mine.
Right? Okay, thank you. There's somebody else on the planet that's like, okay, it's not a good movie, but I'll still watch it.
Speaking of which, is Hellboy and the Crooked Man on your on Monday's worst movies of the year list?
No, it hasn't come out yet.
I thought it was on streaming already. My bad.
No, I don't think so. No, this is like worst streaming movies, but it's all based on Rotten Tomatoes rankings.
Oh, okay.
So bear in mind, they're all comedies. I think they're all most of them, and oh boy. That's just putting me in a spot. So
Well, at least we got now we got something for Mark for TikTok.
indeed. But yeah, so those are my picks for that. I don't mind I occasionally like to bring that up. Like, give me something, because the man's written so much. Like, what would you? There's the ones we all know, and I don't even mean like that you can't pick those, obviously, but just off the top of your head, like what's something of his that if you got the news that this is being adapted, you'd be like, yeah. And I know there's obviously more to it than just, hey, it's being adapted. You immediately go, well, wait, by who?
I like to add one to mine. An actual adaptation of his Lawnmower Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's one of those that might have to be a short film, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. The one movie that Stephen King actually said, oh my God, take my name off of this. You just look, it's like, so Sleepwalkers was okay, and The Langoliers was okay, and the Tommy Knockers
Langoliers
was
is actually pretty good if they had the budget for the effects.
okay.
Right.
Fine, okay. You know what? Langoliers, add that to the list. Langoliers
Okay, yeah.
would be really well done if they had a decent budget.
Langoliers could use a redo. Yeah, I'd be down for that.
I still remember watching that miniseries when I was a kid, because when you were a kid, that, it's like back in the early 90s, the Sunday night miniseries were the thing that we all watched.
And if it was a Stephen King thing, you were absolutely there.
Yeah, and I remember watching that with my parents, and even as a child, I wasn't even 10 years old yet when that thing came out, and seeing those little...
Yeah, that's not it.
The overcooked meatballs with chainsaw teeth. I was just like, what? I was just like, I'm a child and I know this is wrong.
Yeah, unfortunately not it, but maybe the other one. I don't know how you do it, but it's the only one from this collection of shorter stories that isn't a movie. And I don't even... it's clear why, because the other three are just exceptional, but Breathing Game might be interesting to see adapted. And for those of you who may have just pulled a curious face, that's from a collection called Different Seasons.
No, I have that one. Sorry. The camera went dead again. I was like, oh, fuck, yeah, I forgot about that one.
No, but Different Seasons contains 4. There's 4 stories. The other 3 of which are already movies, 2 of which are classics, one of which I think is a bit underappreciated. But that is the novels. The stories are Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, which is, of course, one of an incredible film.
No one needs to try to readapt that.
That's one that I would let another 10 to 15 years go before I tried to tackle, because it's so good. You need enough distance.
Yeah, it's taken over. Okay. For the longest time, everyone said Citizen Kane was the greatest movie of all time. Just, you ask your average film class, they're all going to say Citizen Kane. The new generation now says Shawshank Redemption is the greatest movie of all time.
No, we say Vertigo. Shawshank Redemption takes place number 2.
Look, I love Vertigo too, but... Okay, now, here's...
Robert, what did you say?
Hang on. The other 2 stories in that one, The Body, which became Stand By Me and is maybe Rob Reiner's finest work.
Oh,
I agree.
And I say that as a giant fan of The Princess Bride, by the way.
I was gonna say, it's like you may have just pissed off an army of fantasy, nerds. I was just gonna ask, what would you guys think if they tried to do a feature-length adaptation of Survivor Type?
I would love it, but there's no way you could do a feature-length film out of it. That is one of my favorite of King's stories, but
you need a miniseries. You need.
You think so?
Oh,
hang on. If I'm doing Survivor Type personally, you come to me and say, "This is what we're adapting." I actually don't put it on broadcast. This is a series of 4-minute YouTube videos that comprise the story, and you just release one a week or so for a little bit.
The original definition of a miniseries. Okay.
Yeah. But again, like real short, because
Yeah.
that's how you have to do that kind of story. You just let the horror build episode to episode to episode.
Only, especially with my generation, again, the shorter you make it and still making it scary, you're going to grab us. And it's like, like they didn't WandaVision of like, please stand by. We're going
Survivor type
you cannot
is
make us wait for another week, you asshole. And then
Survivor type. You could actually do as a series of TikToks. I'm not even joking about that.
That would be really good, actually.
You could do 2-minute intervals. That is, you can even do it in the style of him making them for most of those.
Well, again,
Dorian,
Robert,
I think that should be one of your next projects. I would like to see you do that.
You just got to get to a tropical island.
I already threw out the challenge. So again, Robert, I have friends that live near you. If you want to do that, again, I'm not trying to whore myself out, but if you want to do that, let me know, because that would be really fun to do, and I think we could pull it off. I know we could pull it off.
Yeah, let me think on that, because I'd have to reread it. I have not read that since the first time I read it. It's just stuck with me that much because the Stephen King's novels might occasionally struggle with endings, but his short stories absolutely do not.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Again, that's why I threw in Lawnmower Man, like his actual story, Lawnmower Man, not the movie.
Yeah.
Which again, Pierce Brosnan also saves with his charm. I still want that leather jacket. I
was gonna say I may need to reread Survivor Type, because the book that it's in is Skeleton Crew, and that's also got the Mist and the Monkey.
For the record, Skeleton Crew was the first Stephen King book I picked off the library shelf. So the first thing I ever read of his proper was The Mist.
Nice.
It led me to a place where when the movie came out, I was pissed at the ending because I have an unfair emotional attachment to the ending he has in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And
I would say there's another one that needs a remake with a much more subtle writer and a much better visual effects budget.
If you can find it, if you don't know, the original pitch for that adaptation is something you have a hard time finding nowadays, but it was black and white.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch that movie in black and white, all the problems with the CGI go away immediately.
Absolutely. And for those of us watching in audience, whether visual or audio, for those of you who have especially Apple products, I think pretty much every computer does it now. Go into your settings and put it into the colorblind setting that most computers and iPads, especially, and I know iPhones have, and watch The Mist in black and white. Robert's absolutely right. It adds so much to it. The contrast of shadows and such is beautiful.
Ditto. I mean, you can actually find the black and chrome version, but Mad Max Fury Road in black and white is a trip.
Oh God, yeah. And I'm sorry not to jump into superheroes, but Logan in black and white.
Oh yeah, Man in Black version all the way. All right. When we've dovetailed into this, it's the part of the episode where we need to start plugging.
Alexis, I'm sorry. We were not putting the spotlight on you. That is completely my fault. I led Robert down this primrose path. The spotlight is all yours again, boss.
No, it's fine. It's just we were about to turn this into another episode of the Thanksgiving review, and Mark will kill me if I let that happen again.
No, we were still on topic.
You were talking Logan. All right. Robert, why don't you go ahead and give us your plugs?
All right. You can find me doing a few different things here on the W2M network. I am the nominal host of Damn You Hollywood, which airs most Mondays. There was not one this last Monday. Instead, we did a TV party for Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 2. Then this coming Monday, we will be doing a review. I've mentioned it a few times. We're doing a review buffet, a sampler, if you will. Mark has found, because the release schedule for film this year has been so slight, Mark and I are looking to fill up our experience cards. And
we're desperate for content, so we're going to go torture ourselves.
Pretty much.
Level up.
So we are looking at the 10 worst films of the last year based on Rotten Tomatoes reviews. So take that with a grain of salt. We always do. And so Mark and I were going to be hitting several of those in relatively short succession. So tune in for that. Let's see. I host I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. WWE SmackDown on Friday, UFC events on Saturdays. I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast for a deeper look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. That's always a good time if you're interested in that sport and some of the adjacent combat sports. So we're on a couple of Apex cards the last week and this week ahead of the next pay-per-view, which is a big one. The main event, Max Holloway, Ilya Topuria, maybe the best fight you can make in the entire sport of mixed martial arts right now. I'm psyched. I can overlook the Saudi blood money aspect of it even. I'm that interested in the fight. So that's where you can find me.
All right, Mr. Dorian Price, why don't you go ahead and tell us what your latest project is?
We just finished up the music video, as I talked on the last podcast, for Ash vs. the Evil Dead for Mr. Drew 6. And again, that is Drew, the name, and then the number 6, which you can find on Spotify, Google Music, Apple Music, for his hit song, Just Spent Time. That will be up this next Friday. The most important thing that we're doing actually next is sorry, the hell. Do you guys still hear me?
Mm-hmm. Loud and clear.
Okay, weird. Sorry, it said I was muted. Weird. Anyways, is actually a project for the Ryan Express. We're doing a full makeup workup for his next music video. But again, as always, at Frikey Pictures, if it needs to be videoed, if it needs to be photographed, if it needs to be edited, help us make your dream a reality. But I want to leave with this. Since I have thrown out a challenge to the entire W2M network, I want to make this challenge a little bit more fun. Since I
swear to God, if you're putting the blonde wig on now, I'm going to
lose it.
No,
I'm not. I'm just, it's been a long day and I'm shaking my hair out. Since I've offered this challenge to the W2M network, and I know I'm going to hear from Mr. Radlich about it, I'm going to add to this challenge a little bit, specifically at me. And those of you who are audience members, you can chime in too. In the comments, say the movie, genres, ideas and such that you want me to make, and I am going to personally let the governing body of W2M Network decide what short film I make that will be available to you in 1 year from this podcast's actual release date.
Comments don't count if it's part of your entourage, because that's just cheating.
No, again, again, nobody knew I was going to do this. So if they...
Yeah, I know, but I know that a good chunk of the audience is your followers, almighty Dorian. So I'm saying it is no fair to have Mick, Mac, and Shay be the ones who give you your challenge.
I will cut them out of that, and I'm not trying to take over the podcast here. I'm offering a challenge that I think will be fun for fans of us to see in a year. See what we got together. And honestly, Robert, I'm really excited for yours, because I know of anybody on this podcast, you can put it together, and I would be first in line to be like, oh my God, what did you put together?
I don't know. We'll see how the next year plays out. I got to get through the next couple of months at this point.
That is absolutely fair.
All right. Dorian, I know that you're also going to be on our source material on the 29th of October. We're going to be talking about the graphic novel Serial with Mr. Jesse Starcher. Which basically looks at what if the serial monsters like Count Dracula, Frankenberry, Boo Berry, and the like actually existed as universal monsters. You get to hear Count Chocula cry as he admits that the blood of his victims tastes like chocolate.
And as I promised you, Alexis, I will not be dressing up as Count Chocula.
I'm now scared what you're going to look like. Are you also on the TV party tonight for Hysteria next week?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay, couldn't remember. forgive me, when Mark and I talked about that, he said he was on that. I didn't hear if anyone else was on that, so I didn't know what the plan was. But yes, on 23rd, that is the next coming Wednesday, Dorian Price, Mr. Mark Radulich, and I will be talking about Hysteria. This is a new series that all of it is actually dropping tomorrow on Peacock, taking place during the satanic panic of the 80s, and got Bruce Campbell coming back because Lord knows we need more Bruce Campbell in our lives.
This is true.
After that, the only thing I've got coming up majorly is we are going to be discussing Agatha All Along on November 6th. I hate that I couldn't fit that in for an October review, but the final episode airs on Halloween. So I know Disney planned that accordingly. Yeah, I know Disney planned that accordingly, but so yeah. All right, as far as the plugs that actually do pay the bills, that would be Honeysuckle Rose Creations, where fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic. I spent the great better part of today getting ready over at Planet Anime at Bartle Hall in Kansas City. It's going to be a really fun anime show. Looking forward to that. We have a ton of voice actors coming in, especially a good chunk of the cast from Demon Slayer, Ruby, a big bunch of the Helliverse actors are going to be there. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. Afterwards, in a few weeks, you can find me at the Twin Cities Con up in Minneapolis. I'm going to Minneapolis in November. What the hell is wrong with me? But we're going to have a lot of fun at that one. That is our last show of the year. We're getting ready, of course, for our Black Friday sale that's going to start in November. As always, we do our charity drive from Black Friday to Christmas Eve. We will be counting every order that is placed from either of our shops, that it's at Etsy, which I've got up here on the screen, or our Handmade at Amazon shop. For every order placed, we will be donating $5 to the St. Jude's Children's Hospital. We do this every year. I'm excited because we always see more and more people pulling in, more people placing orders, and we always get to give more to the hospital. So if you know someone who loves geeky jewelry, loves handmade jewelry like this, we got a bunch of horror stuff too. If you've been listening to our stuff because you love the spooky season, we got a lot of stuff like that. This is going to be a perfect gift for the holidays, and you will be helping a wonderful cause. And as always, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm never calling it X, and TikTok. Again, that's Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. So for myself, for Mr. Dorian Price, for Mr. Robert Winfree, thank you for tuning in with us. Be well, behave. I'm going to go read some Stephen King.